Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show, y'all. What happens when a family member is an undercover officer, and in the investigation she discovers that her relative is being extorted by the gang that she's investigating? What happens? How does that play out? You know, can she say anything? Should she say anything? What do you do? That's what this story is about. It's about this undercover officer. Her name is Cynthia. She's investigating this big-time drug leader named Big 50, and Curtis, that's her cousin. Those are the primary characters in this story, y'all. And I want you to pay close attention to how the layers get unfolded and how you know what I'm saying, get caught up in situations unknowingly, sometimes because of what you do, sometimes not because of what you do, but because of where you're at in your circumstances. But you're going to see how a lot of these things play out in this environment and from the streets, right? So this is what this story is about. Her name is Cynthia, right? And Cynthia, she was a decorated officer, but she lived in another state, 2 or 3 states over, you know. And let's put it like this. She lived in, we're going to say, Arkansas. And you know that's not the state that I'm talking about because I just try to keep all of this stuff secret, you know what I'm saying, to protect the individuals that may have been involved in it and all this and that. But let's say she's from Arkansas, and she's a decorated officer, been doing her thing and all this and that. And she decides that she wants to get a little bit more training so that she can become an undercover officer. So they offer her the opportunity to become an undercover officer, and she does that. And during the course of this, she's excelling, and they see that she's fit for this type of lifestyle because, you know, she comes from a background where, you know, she got a lot of relatives that were in the streets, a lot of relatives that were in and out of jail, but nothing serious. But she knew that life, so she could assume that role almost without even thinking about it. And they wanted to use that to their advantage. So a special situation came up where they were going to be the task force, you know, the state task force and the federal task force, they were going to be joining up because they wanted to infiltrate a prison to investigate this big drug ring that was being ran by this gang leader called Big 50. Now Big 50 had been locked up a long time, and during the course of that, he had risen to the top of the gang that he was in charge of, and he was calling shots, and he was calling shots from the streets and in the penitentiary because he had that bag. He had a connection, you know what I'm saying, that led all the way to the Colombians. He can get it anytime he wanted, in any amount that he wanted, and he used that to maintain his power base while he was in prison and grow it. Now Cynthia, like I say, she was excelling, so when the opportunity was presented to her to be a part of this task force and go undercover and to go into the penitentiary and work as an officer, she took it. So it called for a couple of extra weeks of special training to get to know the target, get to know the individuals, you know what I'm saying, that were around him, so she would be able to maneuver and find her way inside the organization, you know. And during the course of all of that, it came up that if anybody, you know what I'm saying, recognized her and all of this and that, she was to assume the role, you know what I'm saying, as somebody that had been struggling and decided that, you know, they wanted to try this life, you know what I mean, because that would be a good cover. Because a lot of people that work in prisons know some of the people that are in prison. It's obvious that something like that would happen because you grow up around people that get in trouble. And sometimes those people end up in prison. And people take different paths. And Cynthia, you know, that was going to be her cover, you know, because she was going to be going back to the state that she was born and raised. So of course people would know her. But she was going to be undercover. She had stopped by, you know, her relative's house and talked to him, but she didn't tell him what she was going to do. She just told him she was, you know, back in town and looking for work, and things didn't work out in Arkansas, and they ate it up. And she told them, you know, she was thinking about going and getting a job at the prison. So one of the people that, you know, was in charge of the investigation was pleased with the way she was laying the foundation down. He understood that she was willing to say whatever she had to say to whatever audience she had to say it to, even her family, so that she would be able to get in there and her cover wasn't getting blown and all this and that, right? Because this is a big deal situation. The drugs that were being spread, they were being spread over 3 or 4 different states, and they wanted to stop it. They wanted to stop it, but they had to get to the person that they believed to be the leader. And Cynthia was going to be their way to do that. So Cynthia went to the prison. She applied for a job, and she got it. She was a shoe-in. She had to go to training for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or whatever it is. And after she completed her training, she was assigned to the prison that Big 50 was housed in. Yeah. But what she didn't realize is that there were other people there that knew her. You know, she didn't realize that at first. So when she was walking around on the tour, because when they bring these new recruits in, they walk them around and they tell them, you know, different things about the inmates and all this, and they tell them, you know, you can't trust them, watch them, all the games and manipulation that they play. They're doing all of this and that to her. And so she starts to recognize a few faces, and they recognize her. Now, they hadn't seen her in years, I mean in decades even, because she had moved away very young. And so they were like, ain't your dad this and ain't your dad that? So they knew nothing of her police background, nothing. So they were like, oh, she's straight, this, that, and the third, right? And, you know, the other officers, the other cadets in the group, they were looking at her like, oh, you know these people? And she was like, yeah, I know them, you know, I grew up here and there, whatever the case may be. So when that happens, she has to report that type of stuff to her superiors so that it won't be a conflict of interest, that, you know, potentially she going into a situation where people know her and they could try to put pressure on her, blackmail her, whatever the case may be, to get her to do things for them in this environment. So she reported it like she was told to, you know, and she already had covered up because the warden had been made aware of that, you know, she was undercover. He wanted this investigation just as much as the feds did. He wanted to clean his prisons up, you know. So here's the thing, the commissioner and the warden. But here's the thing. What she didn't know is that her cousin, Curtis, was at this same facility. Now, when you have a relative at a facility, if you're a worker, if you are a corrections officer, and you have a relative at the facility that you're at, one of two things has to happen. You, the corrections officer, has to be reassigned to another prison, or the relative will be reassigned to another prison. But this particular prison was one of the least known for the violence. So she didn't want to put him in a bad situation because she wanted this investigation to go through, so she kept it to herself. She kept it to herself. And the very first opportunity she had, she was going to tell Curtis to not tell anybody that they were related, right? So she goes around, she's doing her tours, and she's learning all the different things, and she already knows that her assignment is going to be in the unit where Big 50 is at. And after a week of doing the OJT stuff and learning all the ins and outs of what it takes to be a corrections officer, she gets her assignment. And she's assigned to the unit the Big 50 is in. And Curtis happens to be in the same unit. And of course, when you got a new person on new officer, especially a female, most of the guys, they try to pull up. When they pull up on them, you know what I'm saying, they try to talk to them and see if they can, you know, get them to choose up on them, and then they can get something going, and they maybe be able to get them to bring them something in and all this and that, right? But Cynthia, she had been trained well, and she knew her role. And she was going to play the role that, you know, she's cool, she's just doing this for the job, but at the same time, you know, she might be open to doing something, but she wanted to take her time. So she put her eyes on Big 50. And she's watching him. And all the other guys that would pull up on her, she was like, who? She would ask them, who is he? What does he do? Because she noticed how everybody gravitated towards him. Now, you got to keep in mind, you know, when you run a thing like that, and I know at one time when I was in rotation, I was like that. People gravitate towards you. They want to ask you this, ask you that, because you basically run the joint. You basically run the joint. That's just a fact. People can say what they want to say. Wardens, people that run the prison, they can say, ain't nobody gonna run my prison, this and that. But prison is prison. Prison is prison. And it's a difference in running the prison, being disrespectful to the officers, versus running the prison and having control of the inmate population. It's two different streets, two different lanes. Yeah, a warden can have control of his prisons, making sure that the inmates don't disrespect the officers and all this and that. But there's no way that a warden can have control of his prison and controlling that inmates don't bow down to other inmates. There's no way to do that because you're not there all the time, and the nuances that take place after 4:30 is what I call it. Meaning after the warden and everybody's gone. After 4:30, that's when the real penitentiary happens. That's when it opens up. That's when it comes alive. That's when it goes down. All the different things, all the things you hear about, it's after that. Yeah, of course, things happen during the day when the warden is there and his staff is there. What I call that tip of the spear. Things happen at that time too. But as far as the maneuverings of the individuals that have status in the prison, those things happen after 4:30. And it's out of, an understanding that, that's when it's best to be able to do things, because when the warden is there, if it's a hard-nosed warden, he ain't going. He ain't going. He gonna send them folks at you. It don't matter who you are, what you got going on, all this and that. You got to show him. And most of the time, truth be told, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose because he has authority. And if you understand authority, meaning he can call in backup. You can't. See what I'm saying? But anyway, I don't want to get off track. Let me get back to the story. So here's the thing. She's asking these different guys, who's Big 50 and all this and that, and they're telling her, and basically, when you're in a situation like that, individuals do the talking for you. They play you up to the females, they play you up to the individuals, so that your reputation is already laid down to them, and then they start to see you as somebody. You got influence. You can get this done. You can get that done. So by the time they make their way to you, or you make your way to them, it's already understood. You know who I am. I know you done heard. Bow down and bless this. It's simple as that. So after about 2 or 3 weeks, Big 50 decides to make his move, because Cynthia's a good looking woman. You know what I'm saying? And she seems to be able to handle herself. And he's done his homework as well. She's from the hood. She knows everybody. So he's looking at her as an asset, a potential asset to him. She could help him do some things. Everybody already seemed to trust her. So why not use her to do a few things that he might need to get done? But don't get it twisted. He's already got his whole organization running smoothly. He don't need her for anything. But if it turns out that she can become an asset and do something that he needs done from time to time, he'll take that. So he steps to her. And their first conversation, it wasn't something like this. He steps to her. He said, "What's up, boss?" She said, "How you doing, sir?" He said, "I'm good." He said, "What's going on with you?" I said, I've been noticing how you've been making your rounds and all this and that, and trying to let everybody know that this is your pod and all these different types of things. She's like, "Yeah, I just want to make sure that I do my job and I get home. That's all I'm trying to do. I don't want to be doing all the extra stuff and all of the things that could cause me to have to, get in some trouble or get hurt or having to hurt one of y'all. I want to make sure that everybody's protected and all. She's feeding them the full line that they feed them to tell us. You know what I'm saying? And he understands the song and dance is being played, and she does as well. So when they finish all the niceties, he just comes straight out. He said, "What's up with you, though? I hear you from the hood. You're from the hometown." She was like, "Yeah, something like that. I've been away for a while, though." He said, "When you were away, what were you doing? How were you living?" She said, "I was living all right, working from here and there, whatever. Never really caught on to anything. I just figured I'd just come back home. I heard about the new prison that they had built down here, so I figured I'd come back home and see if I can get a job and take off from there." And he said, "So you want to be the police?" She looks back at him and she tells him, "No, it ain't that I want to be the police or anything like that. It's just a job to me. I want to make sure that my community stays safe. I want to make sure y'all stay safe, And then she hit him with what a lot of them do when they come in here. She said, "We got to stick together even though you locked up." And when she said that, they caught his attention. She learned well in her training, right? The things to say, the triggers, the push. And he said, "Oh, you about us?" And she's like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, a lot of people say they're about us, but what does that mean to you?" See, because you can be, this is what a lot of people in here call, you can be a Martin Luther King black or you can be a Malcolm X black, right? A lot of people look at it like that. And now, for those of you that don't understand what that means, a lot of people in here see a Martin Luther King black is somebody that wants to take the road that's, riddled with or paved with, blending in, assimilating, and all this and that, go to school, educate, this and that. And even though Malcolm X was about that later on, you understand what I'm saying? Most people like to lean towards the first parts of Malcolm X's journey. You know what I'm saying? Hardcore, didn't care nothing, you know what I'm saying, for them folks. But then they dismissed the maturity that he grew into, the person that he grew into later on, and they aligned more with that. And so he wanted to know which type of black she was, and she leaned more towards the Martin Luther King black. But she let him know, she made him believe that she was about her people and she would help out in any way she could. So he took that and ran with it. He said, well, you know, look, check this out. I already know you done heard who I am and what I do. You know what I'm saying? And if you ever need anything, holler. If you ever need any help, holler. You know what I'm saying? I'm for my people too. Now, people like him, and I'm going to speak from experience, people like him, they take that and use that to manipulate to their end. It ain't got nothing to do with Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. It's got to do with being selfish. So he runs his line down to her, and she bites. She makes it appear that she's bitten anyway. And she said, well, you know, if things get too rough for me, I'll holler at you, you know what I'm saying? But she's like, what would I have to do? He said, oh, not too much of nothing. He said, if you really just need some help, you know, I'm about helping my people. You ain't got to do nothing for me. I'm straight, as you can see. You know, I got whatever I need. I'm good. I'm straight all the way around the board, you know. But if it turns out that, you know, I can need something done and you willing to do it, you know, I'll make sure that it's something that wouldn't cost you too much, you know what I'm saying, by the way of, you know, your time and put you in too much of a risk to lose your job. I would want you to do that, right? That ain't helping you out, right? So she's drinking the water. She's listening to everything he's saying and thinking that everything is cool with all this and that, right? So check this out. Big 50 bounces. He gets on down. And then, a few minutes later, she sees Curtis. But see, when she sees Curtis, she sees him talking to a couple of guys. They got him hemmed up in the car, you know, and they got him jacked up. So she walks over and says, hold on, what's going on? And they let him go and they pull back on him and they say, ain't nothing going on, Miss Cynthia, everything's straight. And she was like, okay. She said, not while I'm here. Y'all not going to be doing it now. Y'all go on. So she runs it to her mouth, and Curtis, this is when he looks at her, he said, cuz. And she was like, don't talk to me like that out here. And he was like, what are you doing here? And he said, I thought you, and before he could get it out of his mouth, she said, come to my desk and shut your mouth. So she turns and she walks away, and he walks behind her, you know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden, something about the pep in his step is picking up because he's looking at it like, oh, I'm straight now, cuz here. And she the pod officer. So he gets over to her desk and they sit down, and she says, look, first of all, don't you tell nobody that we're related. Don't ever say anything about me. Don't talk about nothing that you know about me to anybody in here. Do you understand? And he was like, yeah, but what's going on with you? Why are you even here? You were doing straight in Arkansas. Last I heard. She said, don't say nothing about Arkansas. I don't want nobody to know that I'm from Arkansas. I came from Arkansas. Don't tell nobody none of that. And he's looking at her all curious. Now, see, a lot of people are slow because they have this one precept in their mind about what it is that's going on with you, and they want to make sure they can satisfy that, but they can't ask certain questions to do it, so they still want to be saying this and that. She's like, look, just leave all of that alone. I'll tell you one day, but right now, just leave that alone. I don't want to talk about Arkansas. And then she thinks, you know what I'm saying, that he can't hold water, so she hits him like this. I don't want to talk about Arkansas. I had some bad experiences in Arkansas. I'm trying to start my life over. Don't tell nobody nothing about me and my past life. Do you understand? I don't want to lose my job. He said, cuz I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. She said, okay. She said, how are you though? And he said, I'm doing okay, just having to deal with, you know, being in prison. She said, how many more years you got? He tells he got about 6 years left. She said, oh, okay, that's not that bad. She said, if anything I can do to help you, just let me know, okay? And he was like, yeah, cuz. He said, be safe, you know what I'm saying? And she said, you too. And he gets on down, right? Now, this thing is going to continue to roll out. So please tune in. Don't walk away from this show. This is going to be a show that you're going to remember, right? This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.